Good night. I'm going to talk about goals and motivations that students have when they go to college, related to the history of John that we saw in the book. Also, I'm going to talk about physical and social challenge that need to be overcome in Colombia. Well, I will start talking about the first topic related to goals when you go to college. Well, if we talk about Colombia, in my opinion, students have or many different goals and motivations when they go to college. Most people go to college with the purpose of get a grade, next maybe take a master, maybe a PhD, for finally get married, have kids, and finally get a job and work and work and work for the rest of the life. It is a bored and a repetitive cycle. It is something that I call the repetitive cycle in which all of us are involved, most of us. Well, with respect to the university, inside them, according to my experience, they could develop our instinct, our spirit, our sense of charity by offering classes related to ethics, values, and things that make us able of getting to our communities or towns to help to motivate our spirit of health into our towns, our communities, etc., our cities in general. Well, our culture, there is a problem is that our culture is focused in the fact that your personal success consists in go university, get a degree, get a good job with a great salary, for finally being employed all your life. That way of think, in my opinion, has made that our knowledge and our freedom became stagnant by acting in the same way that our fathers and grandfathers did it. That, in my opinion, still it was in a wrong way. They were wrong in the way they acted. Well, I want to share a personal experience related to the topic mentioned we're talking about, in which I will try to describe how it functions and clarify how does our culture act. Well, I have a daughter. She is 1 year old, and when my wife got pregnant, our families got in shock. I recognize that it is easier to feed and keep your sons when you're done, when you have ended your college, when you're working, and when you're earning money. It is absolutely important, I think. But also, according to my opinion, according to my experience, the main reason for the shock about the family, talking about my family, was that we, my wife and me, we had violated their typical repetitive cycle of life that were so common in our culture. In conclusion, finally, and despite every comment, every point of view, any judgment, and everyone, now we're happy. I'm happy with my wife and with my little kid. And the best thing, we created our own cycle of life. We're living our own cycle of life, and we're very happy to that. Well, next I'm gonna talk about physical and social challenge in Colombia. I'm gonna start talking in the first place about physical challenge. I think in Colombia, as in the rest of the world, there are so much people disabled. It is obvious there are people disabled all around the world, and we should be conscious that these people claim inclusion and recognition, and in my opinion, they absolutely deserve it. In Barranquilla, when you go to a mall, for example, it is common to see people parking in intended areas for disabled people. How does it issues will be overcome? The answer is so easy, in my opinion, with culture. We have no culture in Barranquilla. If we had at least the same level of culture than USA in this matter, for example, I think this challenge would be solved, will be cleared. Well, additionally, most I'm talking about our public transportation system, our buses, our taxis. Well, most of the buses and vehicles of our system have no ramps and an adequate system, in my opinion, for this group of people. I think it is absolutely discrimination. But I think uh, that maybe Transmetro is an exception, where they have ramps in which people with wheelchairs can get in and get out of the buses. And if I think it is a small exception that of that fact that I have mentioned. Ooh, finally, I'm gonna talk about the second and a social challenge that I think Colombia must overcome. Is the challenge of racism. Where in Colombia are so much racism. Well, often I have heard in the news, all of us, I think we have heard in the news that people have been restricted to get into a bar, into a club, because they were black, because they're color skin. Could we take the place of one of those and feel their anguish in these moments? It is that acceptable? What is going on with this world? What the hell? I allow myself to say there is no excuses. I completely say no to racism. Again, my question is, how do we could overcome this issue? How do we could overcome the great and the big issue of racism in Colombia? And now my answer is tolerance and equality. We have no tolerance. We have no sense of equality in our society. A big part of the society in which that I'm talking doesn't know that all of us, doesn't understand that all of us are equal, regardless skin, regardless sex, regardless sexual orientation, regardless culture, regardless economical situation, regardless political view, etc., etc. This is one of the main things that keep us stagnate in something that I called personally a cultureless situation. Thank you.